Folks, everybody ready? It looks like you all are seated and comfy. All right. All right, gavel in. Welcome, everyone. This is the April Fool's Day. Couldn't let that go by. April Fool's meeting of the TPO CAC. My name is Rick Fernandez. I have the privilege of chairing the committee. And thank you all for making it in tonight and allowing us to meet quorum. We have some action items on the agenda. We'll be able to do business. Thank you for that. Our usual practice is to go around the room and have everyone identify themselves and their appointing authority. And in the process, we'll be counting the heads in the room to lead the declaration of quorum by Ms. Sarah over here. Is that all right? Okay. So again, Rick Fernandez, I'm a member at large, Hispanic.
Dana Lazarus, appointed by City Council Member Linford Pack.
Stephen Hollicamp, appointed by the City of Plant City.
Joseph Teacher, appointed by County Commissioner Harry Cohen.
Matt Sink, appointed by Council Member Alan Clendenin.
Ed Majewski, appointed by Thea.
Carson Bush, member at large.
Chris Gonzalez, member at large.
Jamie Jones, member at large.
Susie Watts, appointed by Commissioner Miller.
Hey, Yassine, appointed by the City of South Terrace.
Welcome back. May we have a declaration of quorum, please?
We have an in-person forum.
Good. Public comment. We have anyone in the chamber?
Before we get to public comment,
Yes.
you want to recognize the universal phone?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, we have some folks online. All right, who do we have?
We have Marty Fryer and Idea Adam, and then we have one incoming member in the room and one incoming member online. They're not able to vote today,
Okay.
but Stephen is in the audience and Kelly is online.
All right, so who's the in-room soon-to-be member?
Stephen Gaynor.
Stephen?
Yes.
Hi.
Welcome.
Welcome. Look forward to having you join us next month. Huh? And online we have,
Kelly Loya is the incoming member.
hi Kelly, welcome.
Hello, thanks. Happy to be here.
All right, and neither of them are eligible to vote yet, right? Okay. All right, well, we'll look forward to both of you joining us and entering the fray, as it were. All right, that takes us now to public comment. Anybody in the room wants to chat with us? Nope. Anybody online? Any hands up?
Anyone online for public comment? I don't see anyone wishing to comment online.
And if you would, please put your nameplates facing angled this way. To help me have you. Right. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, got everybody. All right, that takes us to chair's report. Very quickly. For those of you who are new, practice has been and will continue to be our report at the beginning of the meeting as to actions that we took that then went on to the TPO board and what they did with that particular item on their agenda. Last month, the CAC voted to recommend that the TPO board accept the Temple Terrace Multimodal Trail Network Plan. That was in fact accepted by the TPO board. Also, the CAC voted to recommend that the TPO board accept the Safety Treatment Effectiveness Evaluation Report. That was in fact accepted by the TPO board. First action item is approval of the minutes. In your agenda package, you have a multi-page deposit document for the March 4, 2026 meeting. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to review. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of March 4? Motion. Jamie Jones offers a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Yassine offers a second. Is there any discussion on the motion in the room? Is there any discussion on the motion and the minutes online?
Fine.
All right, then by acclamation, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Right, please note that as unanimous approval of the minutes. Thank you very much. That takes us to our first action item. The Beers Avenue Multimodal Safety Study, Devin Bars and Gresham Smith.
Lisa Silva of the TPO staff will introduce Devin. Lisa's our TPO project manager.
You're taking all my verbiage there, Sarah. Sorry. Hi,
Hi.
long time no see you. Hi, Lisa Silva, TPO staff, and yes, I am the project manager for this project. I'm the Vision Zero coordinator. This is our little safety bucket up project. So I'm going to do a quick introduction. This one was a collaboration with the Department of Transportation. That's how this one was envisioned. And right away, I'm going to give you a little schooling and let you know the correct pronunciation of the roadway. It's B-A-R-S-S. So it's named after our pioneering family called the Beers. Oh, yes, I will. It is. That's gonna be. Well, technical slowdown here. Oh, sorry.
Beers.
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 It's fierce, like fierce or pierce. We're two adult beverages.
I like bear rats. That got me all through high school. There you go.
Great team. I was just up on the laptop, but I didn't realize it wasn't up in the room. All right. Okay, here's our little Weber's dictionary showing us the pronunciation. It's fierce plural or fierce or pierce. So it's named after the pioneering family that the roadway is named after. And fun fact, I learned about this back in before 2009 when I was the project manager for the Greater Carrollwood Northfield Community Plan. So Marty Bierce was one of our stakeholders. So he schooled me back then. And so since we have a project named after the roadway, we're going to let you know the correct pronunciation and help it out because I wouldn't want to be called Liza. I'm Lisa. So we're just going to correct it, but we're all human. So bear with us if we mispronounce it.
Good evening, I'm Devin Bars with Gresham Smith, and I'm going to present this multimodal safety study. Our corridor, now this state's safety study came about, it was requested by FDOT, and the corridor is owned and maintained, half of it's owned and maintained by Hillsborough County, the other half by FDOT. Our corridor starts at North Boulevard, which is where Buchanan Middle School is located, and that's the Hillsborough County segment. And it extends to Florida Avenue, still owned by Hillsborough County, maintained by Hillsborough County. At Florida Avenue, it changes maintenance to FDOT, and the corridor ends at the CSX railroad track, which is just east of Nebraska Avenue. Now, to give you some background on how this, why this study was needed and why multimodal improvements are recommended. You see on this slide our community profile, and we've identified the housing units with no or one or no vehicles, the low income households, and the renter occupied household. Averages within the study area are all above the Hillsborough County wide averages. In addition to that, there's a very high number of pedestrian bicycles that use this corridor. We performed pedestrian and bike counts, and the highest intersection was North Boulevard, which is where Buchanan Middle School is located. There were a total of 130 pedestrian crossings that occurred at the dismissal of the middle school, and we had 12 bicyclists. Now, those numbers reduced some throughout the different intersections of the corridor. But even the lowest count intersection was at I-275 southbound ramps with 7 pedestrians and 3 bicyclists during, and these are peak hour crossings. Okay, so these are not 24-hour crossings. It's just the highest peak hour throughout the day. So I introduced this segment, but here's a graphic that better explains it. So we have Buchanan Middle School on the west end, The neighborhood from Buchanan Middle School to Florida Avenue is predominantly residential. It's a 4-lane roadway curved section with residential neighborhoods on the north and the south side. As we get to Florida Avenue, the land uses change to predominantly commercial. And that is again on the north and south sides of the road. Some lanes are added, but only at the intersections for turn lanes. And the curb and gutter along the commercial section is not consistent. There's areas of curb and gutter on the north side, but not necessarily on the south side. Our sidewalks today are 4 to 5 feet on both sides of the road. And there's no separate bike facilities until you get east of Nebraska. There's an on-street bike lane. So in general, we really don't have any bike facilities. The speed of the road throughout the entire corridor is 45 miles per hour. We performed a field visit and we observed a lot of the ADA ramps and push buttons were not ADA compliant. In addition to that, some notable observations were a number of people using different forms of micromobility. There's a gentleman here in the picture on a scooter, and he actually was crossing mid-block, which may or may not know is one of the most dangerous locations to cross. We saw that a couple times during our 3-hour field visit. Some other notable items are the sidewalk as you pass under I-275 pitches to its narrowest width of 3 feet. And the CSX Railroad right-of-way segment at the very end does not have sidewalk at all. And it appears to be a pretty highly traveled path because of the dirt path that's been that stays in the path when everybody's walking. We did a bicycle and pedestrian level of stress analysis. And the highest level of stress that you can receive on this is a level of stress 4, and that is the level of stress 4 is what we assigned to Bears Avenue for this segment. Safety analysis was a big part of our study. The pedestrian crashes were all concentrated between Florida Avenue and I-275. That is the FDOT maintained segment. And there were 3 mid-block crossings between Florida and I-275. One of them resulted in a fatality. There were 2 incapacitating injuries and 1 non-incapacitating injury. The only other pedestrian crash occurred within a crosswalk, and it was a non-incapacitating injury. And you'll see in our recommendations what we're recommending to countermeasure those crashes. Our bike crashes, the trends there are that they all occurred within marked crosswalks. So these bikes or e-bikes were traveling in the marked crosswalk and they were hit by vehicles that either had the right of way and the bike chose to cross in the marked crosswalk when they didn't have the crossing signal, or the vehicle failed to yield to the bicyclist and the crosswalk. Our vehicular crash trends, the main trends are the red light running crashes at 275 ramps and a prevalence of nighttime crashes with 42% of our fatal and incapacitating occurring during the night. And just as a standard 30% nighttime crashes is more of an average number. So anything over 30%, we look at it more closely. FDOT is planning sometime in the future to do changes to the I-275 overpass. And we modeled those future signal change conditions. And in addition to that, one of our recommendations is to change the continuous right turn lanes at Florida and Nebraska to near perpendicular right turn lanes. We modeled those in our traffic software, and we showed that the vehicle capacity with the near perpendicular right turn lanes improved, even though it also improves the pedestrian safety because it requires them to slow down as they're making their turn. And then the signal changes at I-275, which you'll see on the graphic next, is the Currently, there's two signals, one on either side of 275. The plan is for them to be combined into a single signal. So the improvement there will be that the queues of each signal will spill over and block the adjacent intersections. So our recommendations after doing all of this analysis is the first recommendation, the multimodal improvement is a shared use path along both sides of Bears. That's going to be behind the existing curb along the Hillsborough County segment. And we're also proposing a curb to separate the new shared use path along the MDOT maintained segment. We're recommending corridor wide lighting. For speed management, we're recommending to narrow the existing lanes are 12 feet. We want to narrow them to 11 feet, which is still going to be supported with the 45-mile-per-hour speed limit. We're also recommending speed feedback signs and street trees within the medians of the Hillsborough County maintained segment. To offset or to hopefully prevent the mid-block crossings that are happening. The pedestrian mid-block crossings are happening between Florida Avenue and I-275. We're recommending a pedestrian hybrid beacon controlled mid-block crossing at that exact location. And then we're also recommending one in front of the Crisis Center in Tampa Bay. We don't have a crash history there, but we've noticed a lot of people crossing at that location. And it also is a location that's pretty far away from your nearest signalized intersection. For our intersection specific improvements, we're recommending internally illuminated street signs, upgrading the signal equipment with the latest ITS technology, incorporating leading pedestrian interval, the near perpendicular right turn lanes, which you'll see a graphic for in a minute, reflective back plates, and then when we add sidewalks within the railroad right of way, we'll need to change the crossing arms so that they block people on the sidewalks from crossing during the railroads coming through. Here's graphics that we put together. The mast arms that are, excuse me, currently they're strain poles at North Boulevard. We're recommending to change them to mast arms. This graphic shows the shared use path on the north and the south side. The same typical section continues as we head east. This is in front of the Crisis Center in Tampa Bay. This is our first mid-block crossing proposed location with a pedestrian hybrid beacon. This is Florida Avenue, and it shows the near perpendicular right turn lane changes to 3 of the approaches. This is our second pedestrian hybrid beacon location, and this is where those fatal and incapacitating pedestrian crashes have occurred. I-275 interchange, the geometry that you see here is a concept that DOT is entertaining when they do design and construction of this work in the future. And now we're heading east towards Nebraska Avenue, still with the shared use paths. Nebraska Avenue will look very similar to Florida Avenue with the near perpendicular right turn lanes. And then we have the sidewalk connections across the railroad right of way that will tie into existing sidewalks on the east side of the railroad. We have a couple typical sections. The top of each of these slides is the existing typical section, and the bottom is the proposed for this first segment. Again, this is near Buchanan Middle School from North Boulevard of Florida. The main difference is incorporating the shared use paths. We will need to move a couple utility poles within the northern right of way to the right of way line in order to fit the shared use path in. But the shared use path width is anticipated to be between 7.5 and 10 feet wide. As we go from Florida to I-275, our shared use path width can increase from 9 feet to 12 feet because we have more right of way there. And then under I-275 with the overpass construction, there will be a longer bridge deck. So the sidewalks under I-275 should be able to accommodate a 12-foot wide width on the north and the south. And then from I-275 to CSX, we have 8-foot and 12-foot shared use paths within existing right of way. And that takes us to the end of our segment. So what we're asking today is that this board recommend the Bears Avenue safety study for approval to the TPO board.
Before I release crowd, quick question, I think might have been slide 19. And you mentioned yourself, something about trees in the medians. I didn't see any trees in any of these graphics as you were running through. Do you have a photograph or an artist's rendition of what that would supposedly look like? What kind of trees you're talking about?
Well, we didn't recommend a type of like a specimen, but this is the best graphic that's going to show where that grass median is there today. It's in front of the Crisis Center Plaza. There's some very small trees there that are struggling. And so our recommendation is to replace them so that they actually provide more of a street tree effect on speed reduction for Bears Avenue.
Okay. Questions, comments, left side of the room, Dana?
A few questions. One being, did you do any community engagement? Did you ask any of the folks that were walking or biking around their observations of multimodal use? You were out there for 3 hours, which is awesome. But some of your observations feel like they were just based on like a one point in time observation. So just wondering what other observations of multimodal use and also the community engagement question, what did you find out?
Yes, community engagement as a phase wasn't part of this study. So that was not part of, typically there is community engagement on a lot of the studies that probably come through the TPO. That wasn't part of the study. Now I can say when we were in the field, when we saw something that we wanted to find more information on, for instance, the gentleman crossing mid-block on his motorized scooter, we asked him why, because he really wasn't that far from the signalized intersection when he was doing that. And so his response was that he didn't feel like he could cross in time when he used the signal. But no, as far as community engagement, there was no formal phase on community engagement. And other than the gentleman crossing mid-block, we didn't see anything when we were in the field that we felt like we needed to ask more information on. A lot of the stress of the pedestrians and bikes it was obvious to see that, and it was obvious for us to feel it as well while we were out there in the field.
I could add that I'm Lisa Silva, and I went out in the field as well. And as some of you know, I'm a school transportation liaison, so we did interview the crossing guards extensively and the children that would speak to us, and compare it to our other notes. And then at the beginning, you saw all the data that supported the need for multimodal besides what our observations were out there. And this is a 1 mile segment in a very, not neighborhoody area. So that was the decision for less public engagement in this case.
I would, this is kind of a question, kind of a comment. I would recommend if you didn't, incorporating kind of to Rick's point, more shade trees. I mean, if this is a multimodal study and recommendation, people that are walking and biking, this is it seems like a pretty sunny corridor. So having trees or some other kind of like cover, I mean, what else are you gonna do with trees? For folks that are biking and walking would be an equitable addition.
Yeah, well, the reason you don't see them on the corridor outside of the curb area is because we don't have space to be clear zone behind the curb, which is 4 feet. plus provide your shared use path within the existing right of way. So a lot of it has to do with your right of way limitations, and acquiring right of way for this is probably gonna make the project a lot less feasible, just from a costing point. So we did consider providing things like street trees behind the back of curb. We just don't have enough space for that, and in order to maximize the width of the shared use path, so it can be used by bikes and pedestrians, they really need as much space as they can get.
All right, to my left. Matt,
Thank you. I've got a quick question for you. So we're looking at this slide and the trees are in the median, and I'm kind of the opinion that trees are for people, not for cars. Was there ever an idea to take the median, turn that into the street, and then give yourself a bigger grass buffer on the other side so you could actually do trees?
Yes, and this is the only grass median segment along our study corridor. The rest of them are turn lanes.
Got it.
So if we had a continuous grass median, 100%, that would be a feasible alternative. Unfortunately, if we took these turn lanes out, everybody would lose their access.
Got it. Great, awesome. And then I heard you say that the speed limit's 45. Did they do any study of what people are actually driving there?
Yes, we did. We did a spot speed study as part of our analysis. And generally, everybody's going within 5 miles of the speed limit. It's a relatively congested corridor most of the time of the day. Our spot speed studies is not done in the middle of the night. It's done during normal traveling hours. But fortunately, the traveling speed was 50 or less.
Got it. Well, thank you.
you good, Matt?
One more question. Beacons versus hawks. Beacons scare people, hawks stop people, stop cars. Like, was there a reason for just two beacons?
When you say beacons versus
The
hawks,
the crosswalk in front of like the
they're both pedestrian hybrid beacon, which is the recommended type of control crossing for this speed and this number of lanes. Are you?
so the stop, so it makes it actually stop traffic. So it's a red light versus the flashing yellow ones that people tend to.
Yeah, it's not the ROTBs. Are you thinking about the horizontal
I
flashers?
thought they're called hawks, weren't they?
Yeah,
Like the ones.
so you're talking about an overhead light, like,
This is
like,
overhead.
or,
This is an overhead light that's going over the road.
And it stops traffic. It doesn't blink. It stops it when they press the button.
It stops. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Okay, thank you. That's a really like clarification that you might want to put in there when you do the presentation. Like, they will stop people versus the flashing ones that I've seen people blow through with people out in mid street. So thank you. I appreciate your help.
Ed,
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I really appreciate that you're gonna coordinate those signals under the interstate, because I use that frequently, and without fail, going westbound on Bears, trying to go southbound on the interstate, without fail, including this evening, one of those lanes is blocked by somebody who's gonna be the last car, and then the 2 lanes effectively gets reduced to 1 lane for people turning on. So I'm glad to see that. I was gonna ask though, just east of this, Tico just put in a monumental sized building, and I have no idea how many people are working there now, but it looks like it could be a lot of people that could really change your traffic counts on, through the corridor.
Right, and the timing of that, the signal design at I-275 is they'll pick up on those added.
Okay, great, great.
Because that hasn't started. Final design for that hasn't started.
Nice, good project.
okay, anybody else here to my left? Carson, do you have anything?
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. Can you pull up the slides, and I don't know the number of them, or either the bicycle accidents or car accidents? While you're doing that, we can, the majority of people that are, I'm thinking that are causing these accidents are people either going to 275 or coming from 275, because it looks like the majority of these accidents are within a half mile of 275. Can we say that?
I wouldn't,
Yeah, let me ask it a different way. Do you know the timing of these accidents? Were they 7 to 9 in the morning and 5 or 4 till 6 at night?
yes, and so in all the crash reports, it reported the timing, it was not, they weren't concentrated during one part of the day. Because if that was, the case, we would recommend, okay, are we looking at just one segment of the day or the whole day? They were spread across, there was no pattern as far as time of day.
Okay. Is there a? Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, over here to my right, Jamie.
I think the first one I want to say is, did you think about incorporating utility coordination and relocation into this?
Yes, that's, well, for the overhead, yes, we did not do underground. That was not part of it because this is a conceptual recommendation, but then it will go into the next phase of design.
Got it. So then just maybe as a note, I noticed even on just one of your proposed redesigns, there's what looks like a mast arm and the visibility triangle, which is, I think, one of my pet peeves as a pedestrian, right? Of course, all of us, anytime you're at an intersection, that might be a real reason for mid-block crossings as well, because they don't feel seen at the intersection. And then I also saw in your proposed designs, some sidewalk wiggles around poles, so like, let's just change that. And then, the end of that one, the reduction of curb cuts, right? So like any incentive, I saw one picture where there were cars parked in front of one of the curb cuts, and then they tried to effectively use the other one. But as a driver, that's really confusing. Any incentive to close curb cuts and make it very clear which one should be used.
To existing commercial properties.
Yep, yeah. I understand that that's not necessarily typical, but any incentive to do so. Jacksonville has a really good program that can be replicated. They definitely do it. They offer, businesses with clear, dangerous situations, an opportunity to have that work done for them. We clearly need a reduction in curb cuts in this city, and county.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't have an access management safety issue here specifically, and that's when, we would get into those changes, but I know along FDOT segments, if a driveway is blocked and it's not used very regularly, they do contact the property owner to see if they can close that as part of the construction. I just say that with the caveat that there are different property rights, so I don't want you to think I'm making promises here, but I know that's part of the normal process.
Yeah, I think it would be great to have it as a recommendation for those properties that even in just a few pictures. Oh, that one, yeah, you know exactly what you're talking about. Close that. Or at least realign it and have one. And then the last thing I saw, there were 3 railroad pedestrian gates recommended, but not a 4th. That was weird.
Yes, you mean here,
Yeah.
and that's only because one of the crossing arms on the eastbound approach, the existing gate or the pole is outside of where the sidewalk would go. So we're hopeful that you could use that. But
Might be a good note.
it's not that we don't think it's necessary to walk the sidewalk, that's for sure.
Yeah.
If that's your concern.
Just more doing anything I can to make it a little bit better. The positive critiques. And then the last one is following up on what Matt said. I do think tree wells, trees are for people, and a recommendation of tree wells on the multimodal path one every 50 to 80 feet would be, you know, I think a good compromise.
Right away allows.
Sure. Yeah, right. But trees on the multimodal path aren't a terrible idea. I understand that bicyclists need as much width as they can get, but
Okay.
Without
Jane,
impacting.
You good? Before we move on to other questions, I just wanted to know for the record, after we did the quorum call, Jason Grundy walked into the room. He is the appointee of Commissioner Myers. Welcome. I just want to make sure that you made it into the minutes as having attended. Okay, are there any other?
Yeah, Quentin did too, right?
I did it too. I took
Who
note.
did? Oh, you, okay.
I took
I'm sorry.
note of-
All right, I thought you were in earlier, but okay, sorry, I missed you. All right, other questions here on the right side of the room, Susie?
Susie Watts, I love that you're improving under 275. I've walked areas like that and it's scary. The way the wind is and people zooming by, that's a huge improvement. With that, I know that's the people who are doing the roadway. Do we have any idea on the timetable for that?
DOT would have to answer that question, and I looked at the schedule, and it's not within the next 5 years.
Okay,
But that, obviously, I'm not the scheduler.
Hi, Alyssa Joyner, FDOT District 7. We don't currently have funding for those improvements at this time. But I can continue to keep you all updated as I get more information on that, because it is something that we have been looking at and considering.
if you've ever walked it, it's treacherous. I mean, and the wind's blowing, I honestly felt like I was gonna fall into the road.
I know, I agree. I've been out there,
Yeah.
so that's a
Okay.
positive.
You had something?
Yes, well, first of all, thank you very much for the presentation. I think most of my questions are answered by the committee questions, so I think the first question is like about the crisis center. Why did you choose that location for mid-block crossing?
A lot of it had to do with it's almost halfway between Florida and North Boulevard. And the other had to do with the fact that we have a grass median there, because when you are crossing 4 lanes as a pedestrian, you have to have a refuge area. And the rest of that segment has turn lanes, so the pedestrians would not have a refuge. So we really had to pick a spot within the grass median to place the pedestrian, the mid-block crossing.
And the reason I'm asking the question is because of my concern that people might not use it because it's distance from the distance from the surrounding facilities or surrounding uses, I guess, or access to the surrounding uses. So, but thank you for answering that question. The second question is about, were there any coordination done during the study with the utilities or the CSX railroad?
No, at this stage, when we're in a study phase, a conceptual phase, we wouldn't pull underground utility information. The CSX crossing sidewalk width, you'll notice is only 5 feet wide. And that's because that's all that CSX allows. So that is just based on experience that we have with CSX. Now, we didn't reach out to them and say, hey, we're looking at putting a sidewalk through your right of way. But they only allow 5 foot widths, and so that's why you see them narrow width through there right away.
And is there any plan for coordination with the schools in the area? Since
With Buchanan, yeah, we talked to them, we reached out to them to find out, is there anything that specific concerns that they had that they wanted us to incorporate into this, and they more just gave us an update on how they operate the traffic signal to get the buses out during dismissal. But like Lisa said, other than talking to the crossing guards, the school didn't have any specific requests. They were just happy that they're looking at doing safety improvements because they have such a large population of students that walk and ride to school.
Okay, any other questions on to the right? Chris?
So moved.
I have a question on the leading pedestrian interval. It says incorporate. Is this something that's used on this corridor at all currently?
Yes, some of the intersections, some of the places, the intersections do have the OPI, but not all of them.
To my knowledge, it's like the only thing that's free So it would just require someone like reprogramming. Is there anything stopping it to be incorporated like tomorrow? Ready, because the rest of this will require funds and construction, but this could be done. In an afternoon.
Right, I mean, we can submit a request to DOT and then see where it goes from there. For their signals group to look at that.
Okay. Are there any questions online? Any hands up?
Anyone online with a question? I see no one online with a question.
No. Okay, anything else in the room? Okay, Dana?
Is there a public transit line there? Is there a hard route?
No, there's not. Just curious.
Okay.
Chair, may I add on to some
Brief,
refinements to the answers? Okay, so we proposed corridor-wide signal upgrades so that that could be an easy, quick fix. Some of them are antiquated and don't have all of, that's why we said ITS upgrades, the mast arms and stuff. Many of them don't meet ADA. That's why the poles are in the middle and very uncomfortable and stuff. So that was also a corridor-wide upgrade. I am a registered landscape architect in the state of Florida and served on the Livable Roadways Committee for a couple of decades. And so I can tell you that, yes, we would love to have street trees. There's too many benefits for me to even extol right now. But half of this corridor is owned and maintained by the Department of Transportation. And much to my chagrin, their policy is that it's sod or concrete or asphalt, and then anything above and beyond that, other than their gateways that they fund with their 1.5% construction dollars, is incumbent on the adjacent community. So you will see landscaping in a lot of City of Tampa road driveways that are state owned and maintained, but it's only because they have entered into an interlocal agreement to take on those additional plantings and maintenance costs. The other half of the corridor is the county, and that's why we said, oh, where they're allowed, let's put some street trees in, which is the medians is what their design manual allows for, unless we were to take up some of the travel way for the shared use path, which is for all of the modes out there. So that's why we balanced what we could. We would love to see street trees in the medians and in on the side of the roads and all that, but policy prohibits that.
Okay, can we get the slide back up on the wall, please?
And we built off of the past school studies too. So there wasn't a lot to have to do with Buchanan because we built off of the past knowledge there.
Okay, the recommended action is to recommend the TPO board approve the Beers Avenue multimodal safety study. Is there an enabling motion?
I'll move.
I see a lot of enabling motions. Who is that? Ed, I'll take yours. All right, Ed offers the original motion. Susie, you're the second. Is there any further discussion on this? I see none in the room. Is there any further discussion online?
Anyone online? There is none.
All right, by acclamation then, all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Any opposed, same sign. All right, unanimous approval. Thank you. Johnny Wong, hi.
CAC.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you all?
Good, speaking for me.
Love my presentation. I don't do this very often, so I'm feel. Not gonna do it. Okay.
Oh, did I?
Well, all I saw, it being a Fool's Day, I was gonna make a joke about the Egyptian food, but now that I was here, I'm too embarrassed.
No, go ahead.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
the Artemis 2 took off and is now safely in low Earth
Oh, it
orbit.
did?
Yes, it did.
Thank you for letting us know.
Right, that's fine, I'll just.
That's okay.
Yeah, good evening, CAC. I'm Johnny Wong. I'm here as CPO Executive Director. I'm here to present you with the results of our annual certification of the Metropolitan Transportation Planning process. What is this certification that I'm talking about? It's an annual review process conducted jointly by the TPO staff and FDOT. Every year we go through this, as I mentioned, to ensure that our practices comply with federal and state regs. It basically takes the form of a questionnaire. Sometimes they'll ask us to fill documents to verify that we're doing everything we need to from a records retention perspective, that our accounting and budgeting practices are meeting the the requirements, and that we're executing our agreements. Some of the softer questions that DOT might ask us relate to how we're educating our committees and boards about their roles and responsibilities, how we're applying industry-wide best practices to our work, but more importantly for us, how we're kind of leading and establishing best practices for other MPOs across the region. Which brings us to the notable achievements. This year, 7 were identified. I'll read them off to you because they make me feel good when I read them. We've been doing quarterly meetings with the staff of Plant City and Temple Terrace. For years, we've been doing very regular meetings with Hart, Hillsborough County, City of Tampa. We rolled out these quarterly coordination meetings with Plant City and Temple Terrace last year, and I think they've had a really good effect. This allows us to kind of talk shop about what work is going on in small city jurisdictions. We're continuing to offer our assistance if we can help in any way. And ultimately, I think that will lead to more positive results. We also got noted for our Bright Line Station area study. Remember that this was very high profile. Not only folks in the Tampa Bay region, but across the state were really watching us and they had their eyes on us to see what we were going to recommend. Along with that, in the gray box to the far right, we got noted for our success engaging the public. That Bright Line Station survey alone had, what, 6,000 or more than that? Sarah? 12,000. Okay, yeah, underestimating. So we do really good public engagement. We won a federal grant to examine how we can make the prioritization process more transparent, how we might align it with the practices of our counterparts in Pinellas and Pasco counties. This past year, Elizabeth took on a big project to update our prioritization factors and how we're kind of raising the profile of projects that are much needed and will have a more significant impact in the community, and using that info to guide the investment decisions made by our board members. Last year, we also, for the first time, broke apart the list of priority projects from the TIP work program. And as a result, last year, we had the first unanimous approval of the TIP in at least a decade, right? So what we're doing is working. And lastly, this was a little bit generalized, but the noteworthy practice is the TPO vision and dedication. I'm hard pressed to figure out exactly what that means, but some of you may have heard Justin Hall's comments at the tail end of our board meeting last month. He said, of the 4 MPOs in District 7, Hillsborough TPO is the gold standard, and that makes me sleep very well at night. We were also offered some recommended actions. You'll note that the first 2 are to continue doing things that we're already doing. So continue to keep FDOT updated on our organizational roles and responsibilities so that they know who to go to if they ever have a question or a problem needs to be solved. Continue to communicate any of our challenges, concerns, really anything directly with FDOT liaisons rather than jumping to go to federal highway. That's obviously even more important now with all the staff turnover that's been experienced at the federal level. And then lastly, proactively coordinate schedules and resources with the local governments when we're developing our planning studies. Now, we anticipated that this comment would come to light, and so we've already worked on addressing it. I think more so than saying we need to coordinate with agency staff, we want to ensure that the elected officials who are empowering their staff to work with us on planning studies are aware of what we're recommending. Because ultimately they'll have to make the decision about whether a project gets funded or not. And so we made efforts to take our plans to city council, get buy-in of key agency staff that can either say, yes, this project is a go, or stop it in its tracks. And we've offered briefings with elected officials so that they have an opportunity to ask questions outside of the TPO board environment. No corrective actions. We're doing great. I'm taking Justin Hall's words with me everywhere I go. We are the gold standard. The recommended action is that you would ask the board to support the joint certification of the TPO. If the board approves, I will sign, send it up to DOT, and we'll be good for another year. Happy to take any questions.
All righty then. All right, any questions for Johnny? To my left. No hands up. To my right. No hands up. Online.
Anyone online? None online.
Okay.
All right, awesome.
I'll move. that motion.
Okay, well, here's the recommended action. Recommend that the TPO board support the annual joint certification of the TPO. Motion
Second.
made by Mr. Citro, and IASC offers a second. Any further discussion on the motion? Any discussion online?
Anyone online? None?
All right, by acclamation, then again, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. All right, we have your unanimous approval, Mr.
All
Walker.
right, thank you.
Congratulations, Dr. Long.
A joke, please.
No, but educational moment for the record, pool is the Egyptian national dish. It's like fava beans and eggs.
Just spices.
See if I don't put a font.
Congratulations, Mr. Long.
All right, we're at item C among our action items, tip amendment. Lighting on East Adamo Drive and North 22nd Street to US 41. Harry Walsh. Sorry?
So needed.
It's
just loaded.
Yeah.
Okay, good evening, CAC. I'm Harry Walsh and TPO staff, presenting this tip amendment on behalf of FDOT that brought it to us. The project entails a budget of $342,000 to install lighting along a 2-mile segment of East Adamo Drive, or Adamo Drive, also known as State Road 60. In conjunction with a resurfacing project, the resurfacing project had in its scope a budget to provide safety improvements, and this 2-mile section did not currently have lighting. So construction is ready to start upon approval and is expected to be completed by August 2026 to be ahead of the school year. So here we have 3 pictures. Hopefully you can see the lines on there, but the one on the furthest to the left is the context of this project in Hillsborough County. For the second one, we zoom in, and it is directly north of Southern Expressway from east of North 22nd Street to east of US 41. And then on the right is an example of the type of lighting structure. It's a fairly typical one that the project manager from FDOT provided to us. You can see what they look like. Here is the comparative report. So again, it'd be $342,000 split to $341,000. So the vast majority in advanced construction for highway safety, and then $1,000 in in-house product support, which is funding basically at DOT staff time. And this project will be delivered by a RISA, or RISA Roadway Illumination Services Agreement, where TICO installs the lighting, FDOT pays for the lighting, and then the city of Tampa adds the lights to their FDOT maintenance agreement. So with that, the recommended action is recommending that the TPO board approve this amendment to the fiscal year 2026-2030 TIP. With that, are there any questions?
Dana Lazarus.
So this includes 26th Street,
Yes, it should, yes.
where there's a big multifamily housing, mixed use, and then there's the Coppertail Brewing, the IKEA. I live very close to there, and I'm there almost every day. Is there ever going to be a traffic light there?
I can't speak to that directly. I know it's not part of this project. It was just I believe what the project manager shared was the first thing they noticed was there's no lighting. So that's kind of an obvious safety improvement to add, but I think that point probably still stands.
Could that
Further safety
include,
improvements.
I don't know, electrical, like future electrical hookups for a traffic light?
It's an interesting, I'm not certain. That's not something that they shared with me as part of this project, but it was just purely the lighting.
That's fine.
Bless you.
Thank you.
My left. My right. My wall. Anybody up there?
Anyone online? Nope.
Okay. Recommended action. Recommend that the TPO board approve the amendment to the FY 26 through 30 TIP. Enabling motion by IASC. Is there a second?
Second.
Carson Bush had his hand up first. I'll take you. All right. Got a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this issue? Jamie?
Just a quick question. These are traffic lights that are going to be in the on the shoulder, right?
Yes, all of a sudden.
Please make sure you That they're appropriately placed, that's all.
Any other comments on the motion? I
have a question. I know that Tico was thinking about undergrounding, like putting the light, like the utilities underground for hurricane and evacuation purposes, like, or like damage control. Is that something that's, is the initiative still going or not anymore?
I'm not sure. I believe just for this, it is installing, just purely installing the lights. I don't think they're also adding, they're undergrounding at the same time. Just because I think the scope of this, of the resurfacing project only had a limited budget, they determined just adding the lighting first was a higher priority. But the resurfacing itself is supposed to start in 2028, so there is still a bit of time. I have not been told that there is any additional projects along this roadway, just that this is just purely the lighting installation.
Any other discussion on the motion, please? See nothing else? Anybody online?
Anyone online?
Move this to a vote then. All in favor of the motion, please signify by aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Unanimous approval. Thank you. For meeting out justice at a rapid pace tonight.
Everyone's happy.
Huh?
Yeah,
Yeah, I know. Time to hit our hurdle.
Good questions and great presentation.
Okay, we're at line item Delta among our action items. Draft Unified Planning Work Program for July 1, 2026 through June 30, 2028. Jonathan Nixon Elder, EPO staff. Hey. Back. Well, he was here last night.
Good evening, Jonathan Nixon Elder, TPO staff. The purpose of this baseline presentation is to provide an opportunity to comment on the draft Unified Planning Work Program, or UPWP, which contains our 2-year TPO budget as requested by the chair. The full draft of this document is posted on our website, and a link is provided in your agenda item.
It'll just have a delay, John.
Yeah.
Actually, there we go.
The UPWP is a requirement of all TPOs. The UPWP is a 2-year budget. It also sets the transportation planning activities and products to be developed by agencies receiving federal and state transportation planning funding for a 2-year period. The Unified Planning Work Program differs from the Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, and list of priority projects, LPP, and that the UPWP focuses on transportation planning over a 2-year period, as the TIP identifies specific projects over a 5-year period, and the LOPP prioritizes projects for inclusion in the TIP. The UPWP becomes effective July 1st, 2026, and is valid through June 30th, 2028. Task numbers in the UPWP outline the work that will be completed. The use of task is a requirement for the UPWP. Task 1 entails much of our administrative effort and UPWP development. Task 2 contains all corridor and congestion studies. Task 3 has a long-range transportation plan with its amendments and data collection. Task 4 contains the transportation improvement plan, development and amendments along with the state TIP coordination. Task 5 is all about outreach efforts, committees, and our board work. Task 6 is all our local and state coordination with our agency partners. That includes things like the Suncoast Transportation Alliance and the Tampa Bay Transportation Management Area, or TMA. Task 7 will help us track efforts that we spend exploring at regional MPO. Task 8 is also regional in nature, but that tracks the transfer of funds. Here we have our proposed budget. This does not include funds that will be deobligated this fiscal year or discretionary funds. What do we mean by deobligated funds? Typically, funding from the UPWP cycle does not exactly end the fiscal year at a $0 balance. Funding that is left at the end of a UPWP cycle may come back to the TPO after approximately 1 year, or anticipated funding that will not be spent for June 30th may be deobligated, so that it's available next fiscal year. This is a routine process, and more will be presented on this at the TPO board meeting next week. We have $2,472,186 FYs 27 and 28 for consolidated planning grant funds. We have $600,000 in surface transportation funds for both years, and $56,614 for commission for the transportation disadvantage. Now, this slide's not a checklist, it's not an exhaustive list, but here are some of the projects and additional planning efforts slated for FY 27-28. Critical path projects are essential transportation planning activities that can be federally or state mandated. We'll also start developing the 2055 long-range transportation plan and FY 27-28 PWP site. The project suggested for inclusion by the CAC last month were presented to the TPO board during their March 11th meeting. Here is our schedule. Preliminary draft of the UPWP has been submitted to the Federal Department of Transportation, Federal Highway Administration, and Federal Transit Administration for review. Again, this draft can be found on our website and is included in your agenda item. A summary of the comments received will be documented in the appendices of the UPWP. In May, the board will approve the final version of the UPWP. Be submitted to FDOT by May 15th. Following that submittal, a final review is conducted and the UPWP becomes effective July 1st, 2026. Now, our recommended action this evening is for the CAC to recommend the TPO board approve the draft Unified Planning Work Program, July 1st, 2026 through June 30th, 2028. Thank you for your attention. I'm available for any questions or comments.
Okay, thank you. All right, to my left, Dana.
So in the UPWP, we were also able to make recommendations for studies, right?
Yes.
And even though those aren't necessarily prescribed as like, yeah, you're gonna do these, did any of the studies that we recommended, I guess, at last month, because we saw the draft of this, did those get incorporated?
It hasn't been included in the UPWP, but it was presented to the TPO.
And I can elaborate on that. So the UPWP is broad enough to encompass any of the suggestions that this committee made. And so as we develop our projects, we'll definitely take that into account. And that's why we also shared them with the TPO board to see if there was any response from the board, but we definitely any of them could fall within the UPWP if there's a desire to move forward with those projects.
So they're on an official list somewhere?
They were noted that we shared them with the TPO board and we take note of all the project requests that we receive and those were added to the list of project requests that we received.
So, okay, so they don't have to be requests from the TPO board specifically, like when you were bouncing them off of them, were there any?
Sure, I think if we got specific feedback from the TPO board that they felt very strongly about a project, then we definitely would take that into account.
Did that happen?
I don't think there was any comment on the agenda items. Okay.
Okay, so let me just follow up on that for a second. So if Dana or anyone else in this room has a particular item on that list that is a dream shot for them, what would you suggest that they do in order to pursue that agenda?
If there is a project that you feel very strongly about, if you are a representative of a board member, you could speak with your board member. You could also provide public comment as a member of the public. So we have the public comment period before the May TPO board meeting, and there are several ways it's always included in the agenda packet that you as citizens at any time can all participate in, and that would be a way to it.
Cool. Thank you. That's awesome.
Or, yes, I
did. So at task 7, when was it added? So like now it's a required task of our TPO to explore a regional MPO. Has it been that way for a while?
That's one as well. So this is a continuation of a task that we have in our current UPWP. And the reason that we have called it out separately is so that we can very clearly say how much time and effort we have spent on it. So it's not that it was required of us, but it is, we thought, a best practice to be able to say, if someone were to ask, how much have you spent on this? We can very clearly say, this is how much we spent.
Thank you.
Yeah, we gotta move on now.
Yes.
Yes, okay. To my left, anyone else? To my right, anyone? No hands? On the wall? Anybody online?
Anyone online? No one online?
You changed your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I have a question because I'm not sure if I missed it or about the list of projects. Is that coming? Or that's already good?
You go.
So was that vetted through like an evaluation process of applications or how was that list chosen?
It's not an exhaustive list, it's an example, and so there are a few things that came into developing this list. So the first thing that we have to do, obviously, we have to develop the long-range transportation plan. We're required to annually do the transportation improvement program, things like that we have to do. For the additional planning efforts, we did the culvert project that Jonathan mentioned, and we shared that the TPO board kicked that off by taking action at their meeting in November. And after the TPO board met in November, we shared that with all of our committees. So the CAC got it, every single one of our committees got it. It was also in our newsletter, so the general public got it. We received those projects and we reviewed them. We also had an opportunity as staff to think about other projects that we've heard or can see. And then we also, so we review that list for a couple things. We look at it for what we think is feasible. We talked to the last meeting about having some kind of project sponsor or someone who could see a project through. So we want to avoid projects sitting on shelves. We want to see that a project can continue on. So we evaluated for that. We evaluate for other factors like balancing. Are we looking at different types of transportation modes, different locations in the county, things like that to try to see the balance? And then ultimately there is some flexibility if things come up that we can make some changes. And that's why the PWP isn't a line item budget with specific exact things, because we know, a year from now, something could really happen that says we need to prioritize this. So it does allow for a little bit of flexibility as things happen in our community. And we all know things have changed sometimes quickly, that it has that ability.
Okay, I understand. Thank you. Thank you.
Anything else over here? Back to my left. Back online.
Anyone online?
I have a question. Yeah, kind of riding your coattails here a little bit, Dave. Could you go back to that list? Okay, I don't know if that's going to make any sense, but I obviously have no pride, so I'll ask the question anyway. Let's say Dana has a project that she's particularly interested in, all right? That project didn't get picked up by the TPO board because nobody made any comments about any of the suggestions apparently that we made. But you said that this is broad enough that it might include any of those projects. So exemplify for me, because I'm slow. Dana, project that you're interested in that might fit into that list. Was there a particular project that you were thinking
Yeah,
about?
2 projects, airport to the Ray Stadium to Water Street, public transit corridor study.
Okay, so are you telling me that that initiative somehow fits into one of the bullet points that are up on our wall right now? Or is there some other broader bubble that it fits into?
So this is not an exhaustive list. And if you go, Jonathan, can you go to the task pages? Yeah. So if you look at your attachment of the UPWP in your packets, in these tasks, there are several categories. So each one has a personnel that covers us, our staff time, and our benefits. Then we have the indirect expenses. So we have an indirect rate that is part of the Unified Planning Work Program. We have on some of them travel and some of them have consultant as one of those lines. And so if, for example, task 2, system and corridor planning that covers something like what Dana just mentioned, has a bucket in there that has consultant with a number associated with it. And so that consultant bucket could cover the project you mentioned, for example, that kind of study, and the text that goes along with that is broad enough to cover that kind of study. That's also where, for example, our beer study we heard tonight, that kind of study also falls under task 2, as well as if we were to do some kind of smart ICAS project that would, so all of those types of corridor projects, whether it's transit, smart cities, or safety, they all fall under task 2. And we do have a lot of our consultant funding does go into task 2. Did that answer your question?
Well, I think as well as you possibly could, so I appreciate that. Okay, I'm a little less lost. Right. Any other questions in the room? Or online?
Anyone online?
Okay, we're back to the ask slide. Recommended action, recommend that the TPO board approve the draft Unified Public Work Program for July 1, 2026 through June 30, 2028. Enabling motion. Dana offers the enabling motion. Is there a second? Susie and Ayak, you arm wrestled for the second. Okay. Susie Watts for purposes of the minutes. All right, we have a motion. We have a second. Is there any further discussion on the motion? See nothing in the room. Anything online?
Anyone online?
All right, by acclamation, then all in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Unanimous. Thank you, sir. All right, that ends our action items. We are now in the status reports. Item Roman numeral 8 on your agenda package. Regional MPO draft apportionment plan. Johnny Wong.
Curious about this.
Motion. How all of these different MPOs and municipalities are going to be given seats at the table.
Hey again, everyone. Johnny Wong, so TPO Executive Director. Going to be briefing you on the regional MPO draft apportionment plan. And if you have been with us through this long and sometimes arduous journey, we've got some new members, so I'm going to do my best to cover the recent history and the context that you need to understand what we're doing and why. Well, first, let's start with MPOs because we got some very good groups. MPOs are federally required bodies that prioritize transportation investments, specifically those that are funded with federal dollars. We have a lot of requirements. I touched on several of those in my earlier presentation. We're charged with fulfilling a comprehensive, coordinated, and continuous transportation planning process. And we do that by coordinating with federal partners, FDOT, and the public that has to live with the impacts of our transportation projects. Now, state of Florida is a unique example relative to the rest of the US because Florida has a lot, the most MPOs in the entire state. Currently, we have 27. In the Tampa Bay region, there are there's a bunch, but the focus of this effort is to hone in on the 3. There's one in Pinellas, one in Pasco, one in Hillsborough. We're part of a special federal designation called a TMA area, Transportation Management Area, which means that our population is sufficiently large. The area is diverse enough and complex enough to warrant multiple MPOs operating within it. Now, in some other states, you might see other major complex metropolitan areas that only have one MPO, but in Florida, we have 3.
The story doesn't begin in 23, but I'll start there and add a little bit of context. In 2023, the state legislature approved a bill requiring Hillsborough, Pasco, and Pinellas MPOs to produce a study identifying the feasibility and cost benefits of merging into one. That's the most recent development. But before 2023, there have been many efforts to try to merge us dating back to the 90s. Why focus on us? Well, we are TMA, whereas in other states, you might see one large MPO governing this area, but the thought process is that having coordinated planning, coordinated as in vertical integration, might be a better path forward than to have 3 separate entities. Even though we work together, we coordinate beyond our respective county boundaries. The thought process is to reinforce that by merging us into one. At the end of 23, we met our mandate for the state legislature. We finalized that report, sent it off to the governor's office, Speaker of the House, Senate leadership. Did they read it? I have no clue. But we saw that there was some writing on the wall because this effort, this mandate to explore a merger has been stronger recently than ever before. Whereas before it was more conceptual. Hey, is this a good idea? Is this possible? Now there are folks up in Tallahassee directing us to explore this. And so building off of the work we completed in 23, the 3 MPOs took it upon ourselves to say, let's figure out if this is the right path forward. And if so, let's come up with a plan for how it works, how it's going to happen. That in a nutshell is the project need and the motivation. To create a single decision-making policy board to direct federal investments, to speak with one voice. It has also been stated, whether fact or fiction, I can't tell you, that one MPO representing this region would attract more attention in Tallahassee and BC, therefore resulting in more federal and state dollars being directed to this area. Now, regardless of whether we merge or if that enhanced coordination takes another form, the goal is to maximize coordination across the region. We've heard that at this point, it's like, almost faux pas or unnecessary to say, people don't care what county they're driving on. They don't care when they cross jurisdictional lines. They just want to make sure that the roads are smooth, that they can get to their destination on time. They really don't care what MPO is governing the roads. And so while merging MPOs represents one extreme of how we can enhance regional coordination, there might be other opportunities if we decide that a merger isn't the right fit for this region. As we've been having dialogue and ongoing dialogue for more than 2 years with the public, to the extent that they understand the issue, committee members, elected officials, other agency staff, we've developed some goals. If we're to merge, this slide shows or represents what we think is important to deliver to the community and to our agency partners and to the elected officials. That decision making is made in a balanced way so that no one county dominates the conversation and no county is not and no county does not have self-determination, right? It's a little bit of a balancing act. We want to represent the population and the interests fairly to the extent we're possible. To the extent we're possible to do that, we're able to do that. We need to satisfy legal and regulatory requirements. That's a given. We want to maximize opportunities for local input. A lot of folks have expressed suspicion that one MPO would not be able to communicate with its residents as well as the 3 separate MPOs currently do. We need to ensure that we're providing the range of services that our populations have grown accustomed to. I'll say it again because it still makes me feel good, just also that we're the gold standard. We want to make sure that the merged MPO is also held to that same standard. And we need to create a staff structure and organizational scheme in general that's able to adapt to the changes because this region is growing up. We have experienced a lot of challenges recently. I think that there's more on the horizon. We've been working at this for quite a while, too long it seems. I have logged a lot of hours in task 7, as well as my team. We began by reaching out to our respective staffs, asking them what it is about your current work environment that you really value. If we're to merge, what aspects of culture would you like to bring to that new organization, and what would you like to leave on? How confident are you that there's a place at this merged MPO for someone with your particular skill set? There's some background information that we've been working on a little bit behind the scenes. This isn't the most interesting thing from a public perspective, but we've been looking at how our board and committees are structured, how they function, what agreements each MPO has in place, and how those can be fulfilled, even if we merge, our financial and accounting procedures, how our staffs are paid, what benefits we have access to, a whole laundry list. We have presented some of this info in bits and pieces to various groups of elected officials and the public. One major milestone that we passed last November was we organized the principals workshop, and we invited every elected official from the entire Tri-County area to attend and help us understand what are their deal breakers, what do they want to see accomplished with this new MPO, and if they had any suggestions for how to structure it, we received that info. I'll skip through some of these because I know we're running past time, but to date, the decisions that have been made about how a merged board of directors, a board of elected officials and representatives of major transportation organizations would be represented. We presented those to the Tri-County Area Leadership Group. It's a subset of representatives from each MPO. We've also presented some options to the Suncoast League of Cities to see how the lesser populated cities would like to be represented. And what we have determined to date is a board of 25. That's the max according to state statute. Of those 25, 2 seats would come off the top, and they would go to each of the respective regional entities. So one of the seats would go to Port Tampa Bay, and the other would go to Tampa International Airport. Last year, the Tri-County Leadership Group decided that they don't want transit operators to be voting members. They would prefer for them to be non-voting advisors on the board. And so that accounts for 2 of the 25 seats. What do we do with the remainder? With 23 seats at stake, we think that the appropriate way to divide them is by population. A nuance of this is that Pinellas County has a lot of smaller cities. They've got 24, I believe, small cities. We've got 2, Pasco has several. So we went to the League of Cities and asked them, what is your preference for being represented? Do you want to have one representative city from each county that serves on the board and speaks to the interests of the other cities in your county? Do we want to have one voting representative on the board that's representing the small cities of Pinellas and Pasco and Hillsborough? Or should it be up to each county to determine how small cities are represented? The small cities had a slightly different take, but when they met up at the TMA, they told us that they prefer option 3, which means it's up to each county to figure out how to handle its small cities. That's actually the easier option for us, because it's going to be very difficult for Pinellas to figure out how they accommodate their small cities. So I was happy with that recommendation. All right, so it's up to each county to figure out how to allocate the seats that it's entitled to by population. What does that mean for us? Well, according to federal and state statutes to mirror this, the seats have to be allocated based on population of the counties. Within each county, the strong preference is to allocate each seats entitled to the county to all the local governments representing that. That's a little bit complicated language, but if we break down the 23 seats that are remaining by population, Hillsborough and its cities are entitled to 11. Pinellas is entitled to 8, and Pasco is entitled to 4. What I plan on recommending to the MPO board on May 5th is that with our 11 seats, 5 go to the Hillsborough Board of County Commissioners. Now, the county, by population, unincorporated Hillsborough County is entitled to 8. I think 8 is unreasonable to assume that they would want all of those seats. They're capped at, or they only have 7 board members, let's not forget that. And I asked myself, is it reasonable to assume that every county commissioner will show up to a monthly meeting to vote on transportation issues? I think not. And so I'm going to recommend that Hillsborough BOCC takes 5 of the 8 and distributes the remaining 3, 1 to Plant City, 1 to Temple Terrace, and 1 to the Tampa Hillsborough Expressway Board. By population, City of Tampa is entitled to 3, and that rounds out the 11. We have yet to learn what Pinellas and Pasco intend to recommend to their boards, but at this point, it's relatively inconsequential. Dividing the seats, as I'm suggesting to you now, would provide some continuity with our current board, because the city of Plant City and Temple Terrace already have a voting seat on Hillsborough. FIA also has a voting seat on Hillsborough TPO, and the city of Tampa has 3. So essentially, not essentially, factually, with the exception of the school district, the planning commission, and HART, all of the entities on Hillsborough TPO that have voting membership, that would carry over to the merged board. To study this. I wrap up in just a moment. My intention today was to educate, kind of running this past you as a litmus test for how the boards may react. My next stop is to present this to the TPO board on May 5th. I'm looking to get in front of the BOCC shortly thereafter. And the last stop will be the City of Tampa Council. At that time, when it's presented to Hillsborough, BOCC, and City of Tampa, we're going to ask them to make a resolution of support. So they'll have an opportunity to review the draft apportionment plan, along with a draft interlocal agreement and bylaws for how the merged board would operate. If any of the entities, Hillsborough BOCC, City of Tampa Council, Pinellas Board of County Commissioners, Pasco Board of County Commissioners say no, we're going to pause the work, because in order for this to move forward, we need yes votes from all 4 of them. Yeah, that was a lot. Any questions?
Yeah,
Yes.
the vote required of city council or Tampa City Council or Hillsborough County Board of County Commissions. Is it a simple majority? Is it a super majority? What's the vote of
Simple majority. This would just be a resolution to say we support the draft apportionment plan as presented. And that's an important distinction. Thank you for reminding me. What we'll be asking BOCC and Tampa in the coming months is, again, to offer their resolution of support. We want them to take a look at this draft apportionment plan and say, this is fine by me. They're not being asked to approve the plan at this time, because when that happens, a timeline, a clock is set in motion. Once all of the BOCCs in the City of Tampa say, we're ready to move forward, we want to merge, we only have 6 months to stand up that MPO. So what I'm asking them in a couple of months is more of a polling exercise. If this was brought to you at a later date, would you agree to it? Yes.
Okay, so let me just focus on the City of Tampa for a moment. This decision would rest wholly and exclusively with the Tampa City Council and 4 members thereof. The mayor of Tampa has nothing to do with it.
Right. The mayor does not approve this action.
Hallelujah. Okay, all right. Questions to my left? Stephen? Oh, well, okay, let's stay in line.
Oh,
Dana?
okay, sorry. I feel like I've been involved in this since like 2019.
Yeah.
Like before the pandemic, I remember, I feel like I went to a meeting about this as a student.
There was a federal notice of proposed rulemaking years ago that was encouraging appeals to merge. That wasn't passed, but it may have been related to that.
Because I remember, I feel like at these meetings along the years, I've given official, public comment saying things like what you heard about concern about representation and community engagement being diluted. I'm just like, so I have like two big concerns. Or I'm just gonna focus on one. Why did they remove the transit boards from representation? How did the transit board leadership allow that? What were their reactions to that proposal? And then
I wish I could answer that. I can't really speak to what the reaction was from parts, PSTA and Go Pasco or what are they called? Forget their ECPT. ECPT. I wish I could tell you what their reaction was, but you may remember the TPO board vote on this was close to unanimous. I think I remember that Councilwoman Hurtak was one that disagreed with that decision. There may have been others, but it was near consensus.
because when I think about regional, like regional transportation projects, like what even regional coordination, how many projects we even see that require regional coordination of the three counties? How many projects every year even happen where that is required?
Yeah.
And I think about, okay, well, we have our highways, maybe freight, but public transit as some regional transit system is like the one thing that I feel like is always talked about, that this, like, doing a regional merger would potentially benefit as a type of project at the regional level. So, but they're not included.
There's more. Sarah,
Sorry.
please.
One thing I think is important to note of having members as non-voting advisors is that then they can talk to each other. So if you, for example, had 3 transit agencies on the same board, those officials on the merged board could not have private conversations with each other. So I think that is something just to keep in mind as you think about it, is there may be some value in that. Obviously, that's something just to point out as staff.
I just sorry, I'm taking a little bit of chair privilege here, but I'll get to everyone, I promise. I lost track of the player schedule here. The 23 bodies on this board, is that right?
25 in total.
25 total, okay.
2 seats off the top, one each going to Tampa International Airport, Port Tampa Bay. We've made the case that they're regional entities. The scope and their mission extends well beyond Hillsborough County, even, across the state in the instance of Port Tampa Bay. The 23 remaining are divided by population of the counties, cities included. So Hillsborough County, including City of Tampa, Plain City, Tampa Terrace, we're 48% of the regional population, which is why we get 11. Pinellas is 36 and Pasco is X plus Y.
So the airport and the port, both unelected, but voting members, yeah? Okay,
Yes.
of the remaining 23, wherever the hell they come from, how many of them are unelected?
That's really up to each of the counties. The decision made at the most recent TMA was to allow each county to kind of figure out what that allocation looks like. For us, given what I've told you I intend to recommend, the only unelected voting member from Hillsborough County will be Thea, and then for the airport, but they're regional. So of our allocation, Thea is the only unelected official.
Stephen?
Yeah, nice to see Plant City getting a seat, the last version of this, Plant City wasn't gonna go on.
Yeah.
So that's nice. This plan does seem, keeping continuity with what we currently do. The MPO does seem like straightforward, and this is really trying to do that. You know, you mentioned two things that I was curious about. You mentioned a goal of like accounting, having a structure that accounts for growth, because we're gonna grow a bunch. But this doesn't seem like it accounts, like it could account for growth from what I'm seeing. So I'm wondering like, is there something else a part of this that would change over time?
Yeah, once the initial apportionment is set, that's gonna stand until the next apportionment or the next designation process. And we reevaluate the apportionment of our board following each decennial census. And so, you know, like whenever the data is crunched and provided to the local governments, that's usually a year and a half after the census is completed. So if you're looking at 2041, well, 2031, 2041, 2051, and so on. You can make adjustments interim, but you're required to revisit it following each census.
Okay, and then last question, you mentioned if this, you know, if we can't get everybody to agree on this, then there's this other option of just increasing coordination between the counties, or between the MPOs. What would that look like?
That remains to be seen. The consultants would be tasked with figuring out how we can do better. From my perspective, I think we do a pretty good job. By and large, the staff and elected officials across the region mostly agree with each other's projects with very few exceptions. But, you know, there's always some improvements that can be made, however nominal.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Seatrue.
Oh, thank you very much, Johnny. Thank you very much. I'm just expressing concerns. I've had conversations with Johnny and he's kind of brought me in off the ledge. Tampa is the transportation hub of the Bay Area, of Central Florida, land, sea, and air. Our population doubles every day from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. for people coming from Pasco, Hernando, Pinellas, Manatee counties to come into our city for employment, the arts, sports, the airport, the cruise line. The funding that we will get by a multi or tri-county MPO is fantastic. My concern is that City of Tampa will not get the reputation that it deserves because our population doubles every day. I would like to see more of Hillsborough 4, Tampa 4. Simply because our transportation, in my opinion, our transportation needs are greater than the people from Pinellas and Pasco who just want to build roads to come into our city. And the population on these roads are more affected by the people driving into our city. I want to make sure, Johnny, thank you. I want to make sure that everything is set in stone to how much the city of Tampa, and I'm being prejudiced, I know there's Hillsborough County at this table, are going to receive, what our priorities are. And I do not want Temple Terrace and Plant City to get lost in the shuffle. Again, I like the ideas of this tri-county MPO, but having worked with the Tampa Bay Regional Planning and seen how they no longer want to deal with Tampa, I want to make sure that Tampa gets its just rewards out of this MPO. And I want to make sure that other communities are not forgotten. Mr. Chair, thank you. Board members, thank you for letting me express my concerns. Johnny, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was frankly somewhat surprised. One of the slides that you've sort of glossed over, the principals workshop, if I understand that right, 83% of our elected officials in these three counties are in favor of this. Which means
based on the folks.
Yeah, I mean, which surprises me somewhat. I mean, it seems like it's going to happen if that's the case. I do know that, I mean, the federal statutes say that the MPO cannot be redesignated without the consent of the primary principal city, which would be the city of Tampa. But it seems like you're sort of, from a practical point of view, realizing that everybody needs to buy in, or it's not gonna, it doesn't make sense. But I mean, it's really
There are two pathways to MPO designation. And to get into that, you have to take a slight detour into the differences between federal regs and state statute. For the most part, they mirror themselves. Redesignation has to happen in agreement with 75% of the local government population. But in federal regs, there's a second pathway, which says unless there's another process identified by the state. The state of Florida doesn't yet have that alternative process.
Okay.
The urgency behind this, getting it done by agreement of the four local governments, is because if a legislator picks this issue up and doesn't feel that the stakeholders played nicely, there's the potential for legislation that harms us all. Or alternatively, selectively harms one of the local governments.
You know, it's hard to imagine the things that we looked at today. It's hard to imagine a regional MPO caring about lighting project on Adam. Or for that matter, even the Bears project, which is admittedly somewhat larger in scale, but it just seems like a regional MPO isn't going to worry about 3/4 of the things that we talk about.
Sorry. All right, any other comments or questions here to the left? Carson,
I had a question about the seat allocation.
could you speak up a little bit?
I had a question about the seat allocation, Hillsborough County. I was wondering why the allocated seat over other entities such as the school board, or giving additional seats to City of Tampa.
That's only, well, there's a couple of reasons based on the preliminary briefings I've had with county and city officials. I think that FIA could secure a yes, whereas I didn't get the sense that providing a seat to the school district or the planning commission was going to get the deal done. So the other component of that is for consistency with what Pinellas and Pasco are doing. I've already shared that I don't know for certain what they're going to recommend, but I can tell you almost without a doubt that they're not going to give one of their few seats to school districts or their planning commission. They're not represented on Pasco currently, and Pinellas has a slightly different arrangement, but I've been led to believe that they're not going to offer a seat to Pinellas County Schools.
Right side. Brandon?
Yeah, so I appreciate, and I actually, okay, I have two questions. One, I just wanted to clarify what we're specifically voting on. So this is just a plan about the apportionment. So it's not necessarily is the merger of the MPOs a good thing or anything like that. It's just a recommendation on if this were to occur, this is how we recommend the apportionment is designated per individual county in terms of like seat votes, correct? Like this is specifically what we're voting on?
No vote for you tonight. This is just to provide you information on what's happening. The TPO board is going to take an action on May 5th.
Okay, perfect. And then I also was just curious, so I appreciate that there is concern with the transit agencies having a board seat, not being able to coordinate with each other. But has there been consideration of giving them some sort of voting rights? I mean, it seems to me like if you're going to give voting access to things that we consider like essential, I mean, to our community, like the Port of Tampa and Tampa International Airport, surely all three of the collective interests of the transportation agencies warrants at least one voting seat on the board among all these counties. Has that been considered, or?
Yeah, certainly. When we made this presentation on how transit agencies would be represented, we definitely pushed back on the elected officials a little bit, not just like pushed back on the workers a little bit, asked them to question their assumptions about why they think it would be invaluable, or sorry, less than valuable to have a transit agency as a voting member. They had a pretty robust conversation about the pros and cons, and ultimately, like I mentioned, it was near unanimous no on having transit be a voting member. But alternatively, they'll have a seat at the table They can come, they can comment on plans, they just won't be able to vote on core documents.
Okay, down the line.
Yeah,
Jason, is that?
yeah, Jason, yeah,
Jason Grundy is recognized.
thank you, appreciate that. Could you give me an example of a region that did this merger and it was successful and this, in the measuring the successes that the population actually was happy with the transportation results?
That's a very specific performance measure. We have met with other MPOs across the nation that have either merged or restructured recently. Two that come to mind is the Rio Grande in Texas, and Hampton Roads, Virginia. Rio Grande was a little less definitive about the positive impacts of the merger. Hampton Roads spoke very highly of it. It was of a larger rollout across that region to integrate land use. So the planning commissions first emerged, followed by the transit agencies, followed by the MPO. The success story that they relayed to us was they were able to get federal funding for a tunnel that connects North Chesapeake and South. My geography is a little hazy, but that was a very expensive project, and they told us they didn't feel that they would have got that funding if they didn't have a large voice advocating for it.
So they measure success in funding, not by the population of the citizens necessarily being content with it.
Yeah, I couldn't really tell you how the community reacted to the tunnel.
Okay, thank you.
Jamie, did I see your hand up? Go ahead.
So my first question is, do you believe that this merger would help or hurt our chances of getting rail?
Neutral, actually, I think regardless of whether the MPOs merge, the challenge is coming up with sufficient local funding to match any federal grants. When I say we, Hillsborough County has failed by that metric on a number of occasions. And the MPO wouldn't really be able to influence that in any meaningful way.
And now just for my own education, being new, what was T-Barta? What was the failure of T-Barta, and why are we not including Manatee, Polk? Whatever.
Understaffing, well, a lot of reasons that T-Barta was unsuccessful. From my perspective, I think that they were perpetually understaffed. The qualified, great planners that they had spent a lot of their time chasing down local governments to contribute their annual dues to keep the lights on in T-Barta. And it was very difficult for them to generate meaningful regional transportation plans, recognizing that funding is limited. Until there's a revenue source identified in Hillsborough County, we're never going to be able to come to the table and get regional transit started. So those are just a couple. I could go on off the record.
But this one would be different because it's actually funded.
Yeah, we're entitled to at least federal planning funds. We've got SU, we've got PL. We don't rely heavily on local funding, with the exception that the merged MPO would need to have a funding source to purchase office space. That's the real funding need that we'll need to address.
And then the last one was a consideration for Manatee and Polk being a part of this made, and why was it ultimately?
No, and I'm sure that they're delighted that they were not part of it. Honestly, it's based on the urbanized areas. Ours are just so tightly interwoven. We have fringe connections as you get outside of the urban core, but the connection in Tampa, Pasco, Hillsborough is really strong. Over time, as our area urbanizes out, we might have to consider bringing other MPOs in, but the TMA is kind of an obvious target.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
I have two questions. The first one is, was this breakdown of you guys come up with this breakdown, with Pinellas County and Pasco County? Like, is this the recommendation as well?
Pinellas and Pasco are going to be responsible for presenting their respective recommendations to their boards. So Pinellas has 2 stops. The first is their MPO meeting on April 8th, I believe, for approval. And then they're going to get on the agenda for Pinellas County Commission shortly thereafter. Pasco has the same issue. They haven't yet scheduled their MPO presentation. Afterward, they'll have to secure approval from the BOCC. My allocation proposal is largely independent of them, with the exception of how the school district and planning commission are handled.
And my second part, so do we not have any idea how they're thinking of dividing things up?
Yeah, so is Pinellas BOCC will have 2 seats, 2 or 3, and then 1 seat for, or I'm sorry, I believe it's 3 seats for the Pinellas County Commission. Sarah, correct me if I'm wrong. 2 for the city of St. Pete, 1 for Clearwater, 1 for Largo, and 1 for Pinellas Park.
So I have the latest now.
But that's consistent with the 8 seats that were.
They're,
Yeah.
yeah, they're not gonna have show more than 8. Okay.
Okay.
It's likely that all 4, it's almost certain that all 4 of Pasco seats will vote in their county commissioners. Is that a question or a stretch? Question.
Okay, so, my second question and my last one is, how do you envision the CAC to look like if this actually proceeds? And the same thing with the BPAC as well. I feel like they're similar. The TAC might be different, but the CAC and the BPAC might.
I don't have really strong opinions on that. I'll tell you, it's going to go either one of 2 directions, either one large CAC that represents the entire region or 3 separate independent units. If you're putting me on the spot, personally, I think it makes more sense to have a CAC in each county, so that you get more connection to community needs rather than, and also logistically having people travel in here from the fringes of Hillsborough County has always been a challenge. I don't think that we can expect attendance and quorum if we extrapolate that to the larger region.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Johnny, I have a question for you, a timeline on this. And I'm thinking about our municipal elections coming up a year. Who might or might not be sitting on city council at various times over that period of 12 months. Is this issue likely to go for the resolution that you mentioned earlier, to city council, sometime between now and the March election?
We're looking at late May, early June for the resolution, and then the final vote of approval by spring, summer 2027.
Spring, summer. So that's under the new
Yet to be
city council.
Yeah.
Okay. The city council that currently sits, it would be empowered to kill this when you come to it for the resolution at the middle part of this year. May?
Kill is very.
Say they don't want to do it.
Kill is very final. What that does impact is the timeline of the study. If they tell us that there are major deal breakers that require us to go back to square one, I don't think that we have the time in the budget to execute that. So where does that leave the merger conversation? I really don't know. The timeline that I'm focused on is October of this year because of the risk of a legislator introducing a bill that pushes this forward without our feedback.
Understanding we're short on time and this is a status item, not an action item. So quickly, please, Stephen. Oh, I'm sorry. It's your arm up. Dana?
Yeah, so maybe something for like transit could be a more robust attempt at transit committees. I feel like the transportation disadvantage is probably a requirement in some way of the state, so I'm sure that will continue on in some way, but maybe making an effort to have more inclusion in that and make it like more generally like transit you know, the transit agencies, representation or transit riders, something like that.
At this point, nothing's off the table. I think what you said makes a lot of sense. We kicked around those ideas as well. Transit could be represented first as non-voting advisors on the full board. I'm almost certain that they would be invited to participate in the technical advisory committee, which is one of the committees that's required. CAC is also required. Pinellas and Hillsborough have a lot of discretionary advisory committees that we get a lot of value from. So I assume that those would continue on. Haskell doesn't have quite as many, but long story short, nothing's off the table.
All right, we have Nat.
All right, one question. This feels like fear of the state doing what they do, which is preemptively taking away stuff from the local municipalities. Who has already expressed an interest in this that kind of got us to where we are?
The authors of the original bill that required us to do the study were Senators DeSigley and Cooper and Ellis. I've heard interest from some reps in Hillsborough County. I'm not going to name them right now, but I've heard interest from some reps in Hillsborough County. Senator Cooper and DeSigley remain interested. I've been told that current Lieutenant Governor Collins also has an interest in seeing this merger happen.
Thank you.
Okay, we have 5 minutes to close this meeting out. I think we're agendaed for exactly that. So let's see if we can get it done. Johnny, thank you.
Appreciate that feedback. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're standing member requests is bill to dissolve HART, and these are things we keep coming back to every month.
Thing has happened with that bill, and if I can move straight to the, other one on the potential merger of the MPOs, you just heard from John.
Thank
You
you.
did it, very good.
We take the legislative sessions over.
So now we're on unfinished business, line item 9.
Yes, so your next meeting where you'll be taking action is May 6th at 6 p.m. Moving under that, you do have a workshop between now and then on the list of priority projects or your priority list. That is April 15th at 6 p.m. You will not be voting at that meeting, so you may attend in person in this room or virtually. We do not need a quorum for that meeting. And then there is another workshop later in May 20th on the Transportation Improvement Program. And a reminder, I know you've heard it a couple times, but the priority list is at a separate meeting from the Transportation Improvement Program, and that's why we have the 2 workshops for you.
Member interest in future topic requests, anything? To add to our rather lengthy list? No?
I just have a question.
Oh, sorry, Joe.
No problem, Mr. Chair. Ms. Sarah, have you informed us of your motion?
Probably not. It was announced at the board meeting, you're right.
Would you like to inform us about this?
New Assistant Executive Director.
Will you remain as our liaison or? Okay, well, we're living right. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there anything else for the good of the order? Nope, we're adjourned. Thank you. Yeah.
People appointed by.
Hey, say hi for Mike to get people talking.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So I work for WGI.